So Homera came up with this great idea of showing Ed and Kelly and myself, which we had never done before. And we loved the idea of doing it, but we loved it even more when we saw the result. The name of it was Family Plot, which we came up with based on the Hitchcock film of the 60s. It just seemed to give it a darker undertone than a Family Affair might have given it.
I thought the show was terrific because it wasn't just me. It was a family plot. I think it was out of fear that I couldn't do something if it didn't have a symmetrical alignment, that I realized I liked things that were patterning and spots and splashes and evidence of a kind of activity that had no purpose other than trying something. Well, Andy's paintings always stand out for me because I couldn't understand how he could do them.
Show Family Plot, which was Kelly Berg, Ed Moses, and myself. So all family by blood or marriage. We called it 3 generations of painters in LA. It was the first time I'd shown with my father a couple times before, but this was definitely the first time we were all together. Once we got the work there and started installing, it was kind of amazing how many connective tissues there were between all of our work. We all play with a zone between abstraction and some type of representation, and probably my father being the most extreme abstract painter of the 3 of us, and Kelly being the most representational, and me falling somewhere in the middle. But I think that we're all interested in mark making, and I think that we're all interested in things that allude to natural phenomenon or are images of natural phenomenon. So my father works in a very organic, loose kind of way, the way he lays down paint. It leaves a lot of room for chance and accent to happen in his work, even though it's very formal, very gestural. It does tend to echo sometimes images in nature, even though it's very much based on formal abstraction. My work pushes it one step further towards imagery. I've always been interested in exploring kind of this zone between abstract painting and things that look like natural phenomenon, either on a human or a microscopic or a macroscopic scale. It could look like a landscape or a close-up of a landscape or an aerial photograph of the earth or something under a microscope. I've sort of explored all that type of imagery. Kelly explores a lot of different zones. Some of them are hybrids between abstract paintings and representational paintings of disasters. Some of them are specifically pictorial. I played with images that I found before, all going back to the mid 80s even, where I was silk screening images at that time and actually even just collaging images on my paintings back in the early 80s. I've got a 30-year survey coming up next year, and I wanted to reconnect to that work, and this was one way of doing that. I think I made this painting about a year ago, and it's a found alchemical image from 1618, I think, Michael Meyer. And he was an alchemist and physician and did these incredible drawings that were symbolic of these notions of alchemical transformation. And I feel like my work has always been very much concerned with this idea of transmutation and transformation, taking one set of materials, letting organic processes kind of happen, and then coming up with another output that hopefully is visually stimulating as well.
We all live next door to each other and spend a lot of time together. We spend time doing studio visits, but we had never seen the work all together. So when we hung the show, I thought it was so interesting, the different connections that I never would have expected. For example, I did this black and white volcano painting with this huge crevice in the earth from an earthquake. And seeing that hanging next to one of Ed's craquelure paintings that was black and white, it was very interesting to see the crackle and then my kind of representational rendering of this crack in the earth. All of our color palettes have kind of always crossed over, especially me and Andy, working with a lot of this geological and natural imagery. We both really enjoy kind of brighter colors. I had been wanting to explore more in a black and white color palette, but what really got me to change suddenly was the death of David Bowie. The day after he died, I just went into my studio and I just had to create. David Bowie has always been a huge influence. I began listening to him at age 5, actually. He's kind of really been the soundtrack of my life and making art for as long as I can remember. And around this similar time, I started making art. In this piece, I'm exploring this new technique that no one had seen before. It is this textural painting, and then with this kind of rainbow iridescence that is this technique that I just developed in my studio through experimentation. And I had been wanting to explore it for a while, ever since my visit to the island of Hawaii and the big volcano, which me and Andy went to on our honeymoon. And seeing the lava, what happens when the lava hardens, it has this rainbow iridescence, almost like an oil spill.